Tonight, we're exploring the mysterious world of ancient Egypt. From towering pyramids and hidden tombs to forgotten cities buried beneath the desert sand. This is a calm, cinematic journey through one of the most fascinating civilizations in human history. Before we begin, leave a comment below telling me what city you're watching from tonight. And if you enjoy documentaries like this, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what mystery I should explore next. Sleep well tonight. Several thousand years before the first pyramid rose above the desert horizon, Egypt was already becoming something strange, something unlikely. If you had stood along the Nile in those distant centuries, long before the age of Pharaohs reached its peak, you would not have seen giant monuments or golden tombs. You would have seen water moving slowly through an ocean of sand, cutting a thin green path across one of the harshest landscapes on Earth. And somehow, against all odds, that narrow ribbon of life would become the center of one of the most powerful civilizations humanity had ever known. What makes ancient Egypt so fascinating is not only what it built, but where it appeared. Civilization was never guaranteed here. In fact, by every natural expectation, this region should have remained scattered tribal land for thousands of years. The Sahara surrounding the Nile was already expanding, becoming hotter and drier generation after generation. But the river changed everything. Every summer, rains falling far to the south in Central Africa caused the Nile to overflow its banks. Dark, fertile mud spread across the floodplain, transforming dry earth into farmland. Then, the waters retreated, leaving behind a fresh layer of rich soil. This cycle repeated year after year with astonishing consistency, almost like a heartbeat. For the people living there, the Nile must have seemed less like a river and more like a living force with intentions of its own. Entire communities organized their lives around its rhythms. Crops, seasons, taxes, religion, even ideas about death and rebirth were eventually shaped by this endless cycle of flooding and renewal. In many ways, Egypt's civilization was not built beside the Nile. It was built by the Nile. But the story becomes even stranger when you look further back in time. Because before Egypt became a land of deserts, parts of the Sahara were green. Thousands of years before the pyramids, this region looked dramatically different. Ancient rock art discovered deep in the desert shows giraffes, crocodiles, hippos, and massive herds of cattle wandering across lands that are now almost completely barren. There were lakes here once, grasslands, seasonal rivers. Entire human communities lived in places that today could barely support life for more than a few days. Then the climate slowly changed. The rains weakened, lakes disappeared, vegetation collapsed. Year after year, century after century, the Sahara transformed into something more hostile. And as conditions worsened, human populations were gradually pushed toward the Nile Valley, one of the only remaining reliable water sources in northeastern Africa. Some historians believe this environmental pressure may have unintentionally concentrated people into closer contact, forcing cooperation, competition, and eventually political organization on a scale that had never existed there before. In other words, ancient Egypt may have emerged partly because the surrounding world became impossible to survive in. And once people gathered along the Nile in larger numbers, something new began to happen. Villages expanded. Farming became more stable. Food surpluses allowed some individuals to specialize in things other than survival. Pottery improved. Trade routes stretched farther. Burial practices became more elaborate. Small regional leaders gained influence. Over time, scattered settlements slowly evolved into organized societies with symbols, rituals, and growing political power. Even before written history fully appears, there are signs that the people living here were already thinking in surprisingly sophisticated ways about order, identity, and permanence. Archaeologists have discovered carefully planned cemeteries dating back thousands of years before the Great Pyramids. Graves sometimes contained tools, jewelry, food, cosmetics, and carved objects placed beside the dead, suggesting people may already have believed that existence continued in some form after death. That idea would eventually become one of the central obsessions of Egyptian civilization. But at this early stage, Egypt was not yet unified. Different regions along the Nile developed their own customs and symbols. The north, near the Nile Delta, was wetter and more connected to Mediterranean trade networks. The south, deeper inland, was narrower, harsher, and culturally distinct. These regions did not automatically see themselves as one civilization. In fact, for long periods, they may have competed fiercely with each other. Then, sometime around 3100 BCE, something changed that altered Egyptian history forever. A ruler, often identified today as Narmer, though some details remain debated, appears to have united Upper and Lower Egypt under a single authority. Ancient ceremonial carvings show a king wearing the crowns of both regions, symbolizing political unification. Whether this process happened through warfare, alliances, religious influence, or a combination of all three is still unclear. But the result was extraordinary. Egypt became one of the first large territorial states in human history. And unlike many ancient kingdoms that rose and collapsed quickly, Egypt developed a stability that lasted for astonishing lengths of time. Part of that stability may have come from geography itself. The Nile acted like a natural highway running north and south, connecting settlements across huge distances. Deserts protected the civilization from invasion on both sides. The Mediterranean Sea shielded the north. Compared to places like Mesopotamia, where competing states constantly fought over open land, Egypt was unusually isolated. This isolation gave Egyptian culture time to grow inward, becoming deeply focused on continuity, ritual, and preservation. That may explain why Egyptian civilization often feels strangely timeless to modern observers. Even across thousands of years, its artistic styles, religious symbols, and political structures changed far more slowly than many neighboring societies. The Egyptians seemed deeply suspicious of chaos. Stability itself became sacred. You can already see traces of this mindset long before the Pyramid Age fully begins. Early rulers did not simply present themselves as powerful humans. They increasingly positioned themselves as guardians of cosmic balance. The concept later known as Ma'at, often translated loosely as harmony, truth, or order became central to Egyptian thought. To the Egyptians, order was not automatic. It had to be maintained constantly against the forces of disorder waiting beyond the edges of civilization. The desert surrounding the Nile may have reinforced this worldview every single day. Beyond the green riverbanks lay emptiness, heat, death, and unpredictability. Inside the Nile Valley, there was structure. Outside it, there was chaos. And perhaps no civilization in history embraced this contrast more deeply. Even the earliest Egyptian architecture reflects this psychological divide. Long before giant pyramids appeared, tombs and ceremonial structures were already being designed to resist time itself. Mud brick buildings evolved into stone monuments. Symbols became standardized. Certain animals gained sacred meaning. Falcons, jackals, crocodiles, scarab beetles. Creatures connected to survival, death, or the cycles of nature gradually entered religious imagination in increasingly complex ways. At the same time, writing itself was beginning to emerge. The origins of Egyptian hieroglyphs remain partly mysterious. Some scholars believe the system developed independently. Others suspect outside influence from Mesopotamian writing systems through trade contact. But Egyptian hieroglyphs quickly evolved into something highly distinctive. They were not merely practical markings for trade records. They carried artistic, spiritual, and political power. Writing in Egypt often seemed less like simple communication and more like a way of making ideas permanent. To carve words into stone was to protect them from time, and that fear of disappearance, of being forgotten, may have shaped nearly everything Egypt later became. Because in a land where floods erased fields every year, where deserts swallowed roads and villages, permanence was precious. Memory mattered. Names mattered. Tombs mattered. The dead were not meant to vanish. They were meant to continue. Centuries later, this desire for permanence would produce colossal monuments visible from miles away. But the foundations of those ideas were already forming here, in these earlier centuries before the Pyramid Age truly began. And yet, for all that historians have uncovered, enormous gaps remain. Much of early Egypt is still hidden beneath modern cities, buried under layers of mud and sand, or lost entirely to time. Entire settlements may still lie undiscovered beneath the Nile Delta. Organic materials decayed long ago in the humid north. Records are incomplete. Dates remain debated. Some rulers appear only briefly in fragmented inscriptions before disappearing from history again. In a strange way, the Egypt before the pyramids may be even more mysterious than the Egypt after them, because this was the moment when a scattered collection of farming communities slowly transformed into something larger than anyone living there could possibly have understood. No one standing beside the Nile at the time knew they were witnessing the birth of one of humanity's most enduring civilizations. They were simply surviving floods, burying their dead, trading goods, watching the river rise and fall beneath the desert sun. And somewhere within those ordinary human routines, the foundations of ancient Egypt quietly began to take shape. Long before modern cities filled the horizon with steel and glass, there was a different skyline rising from the edge of the desert. Massive, geometric shapes stood against the heat of the Egyptian sun with an almost unnatural stillness, as if they had always been there. Even now, thousands of years later, the pyramids do not feel entirely connected to ordinary history. They feel older than memory itself. And perhaps that is part of what makes them so difficult to stop thinking about. Because the deeper archaeologists study the pyramids, the stranger they become. At first glance, the explanation seems simple. The pyramids were tombs built for kings, giant monuments designed to protect the bodies and souls of powerful rulers after death. That part is largely accepted. Ancient texts, burial chambers, funerary objects, and religious traditions all point toward the pyramids serving a spiritual purpose connected to the afterlife. But once you move beyond that basic answer, an enormous number of questions begin to appear. Why build structures this enormous in the first place? Why devote entire generations of labor, planning, and resources to mountains of stone in the middle of the desert? And perhaps most mysterious of all, how did people living over 4,000 years ago create something so astonishingly precise that even modern engineers still study it with admiration? The story begins before the Great Pyramid itself. Early Egyptian rulers were already experimenting with monumental tombs long before the famous pyramids at Giza existed. The earliest royal tombs were relatively simple rectangular structures called mastabas, built from mud brick. They sat low against the desert ground, with sloping walls and underground burial chambers hidden beneath them. But over time, Egyptian architecture began evolving toward something more ambitious. Then came a ruler named Djoser. Around the 27th century BCE, Djoser's architect, often identified as Imhotep, designed something Egypt had never seen before. Instead of building a single flat mastaba, the structure rose upward in stacked layers, forming what became known as the Step Pyramid of Saqqara. It was not yet the smooth-sided pyramid most people imagine today, but it changed everything. For the first time, stone was being used on a massive scale to create a monument intended not merely to survive a lifetime, but perhaps eternity itself. And the choice of stone matters more than it first appears. Mud brick eventually collapses. Wood rots. But limestone can survive for thousands of years beneath the desert sky. The Egyptians were not simply constructing buildings anymore. They were experimenting with permanence. Some historians believe the pyramid's shape itself may have carried symbolic meaning tied to sunlight. The angled sides resembled rays descending from the sun god Ra, allowing the king's soul to ascend toward the heavens after death. Others point toward earlier sacred mound imagery connected to Egyptian creation myths. There is still debate over exactly how these religious ideas merged into pyramid design. But what seems clear is that these structures were never viewed as simple engineering projects. They were spiritual machines built to interact with eternity. And with each new pyramid, the ambition grew larger. By the time Pharaoh Khufu ordered the construction of the Great Pyramid at Giza around 2560 BCE, Egyptian builders were attempting something almost unimaginable. The structure originally stood around 481 feet tall, making it the tallest human-made structure on Earth for nearly 4,000 years. Millions of limestone blocks, many weighing multiple tons, were cut, transported, lifted, and placed with extraordinary precision. Some internal chambers align so accurately that even small modern errors become noticeable beside them. What makes this even more impressive is that the Egyptians achieved it without iron tools, cranes, engines, or modern machinery. And that reality has fueled centuries of speculation. For generations, people have proposed increasingly elaborate explanations for how the pyramids were built. Some theories remain grounded in archaeology. Others drift far into fantasy. Ancient lost technologies, forgotten civilizations, visitors from other worlds. The pyramids seem to attract speculation because many people struggle to accept that ancient human beings could organize labor and engineering on such an immense scale. But the archaeological evidence that does exist paints a very human picture. Near Giza, archaeologists have uncovered remains of workers' villages containing bakeries, sleeping quarters, tools, food storage areas, and cemeteries. Skeletons show signs of hard physical labor, but also evidence of medical care, including healed injuries. Workers appear to have been fed surprisingly well, receiving bread, beer, fish, onions, and large amounts of cattle meat. This does not resemble the image of starving slave armies often shown in movies. In fact, most Egyptologists today believe the pyramid workforce consisted largely of paid laborers, farmers working seasonally during Nile flood periods when agriculture temporarily paused, and highly skilled craftsmen overseeing specialized tasks. That does not make the work less brutal. Transporting stone under the Egyptian sun would have been exhausting beyond modern imagination. Workers likely used wooden sledges dragged across prepared surfaces, possibly lubricated with water to reduce friction. Relief carvings from later periods actually show workers pouring liquid in front of sledges, supporting this possibility. Ramps almost certainly played a major role as well, though exactly what types of ramps were used remains heavily debated. Straight ramps would have required enormous amounts of material. Spiral ramps create different logistical problems. Some researchers suggest combinations of internal and external ramps may have been used during different phases of construction. Others believe certain lifting methods involving levers were possible for higher levels. No single theory perfectly explains every stage of pyramid construction, which is partly why the debate continues. And perhaps that uncertainty is important. Modern people often expect ancient mysteries to have neat, final answers. But history rarely works that way. The pyramids were built over decades by thousands of individuals across changing conditions, evolving plans, and political pressures. There may never have been one single method used from beginning to end. Still, some aspects remain astonishing no matter which theory you favor. The Great Pyramid is aligned with remarkable accuracy to true north. Its base is nearly level despite covering more than 13 acres. Tiny measurement differences become almost invisible across massive distances. Even today, standing beside those stones creates a strange psychological effect. The structure feels less assembled than imposed onto the landscape itself, as though it emerged naturally from the desert. And yet, the deeper researchers explore inside the pyramids, the more complicated the story becomes. The internal chambers of the Great Pyramid remain one of the most debated aspects of the structure. The King's Chamber, Queen's Chamber, narrow shafts, hidden cavities, and unfinished spaces continue to raise questions about both engineering and symbolism. Some shafts align closely with stars that carried religious importance in ancient Egyptian cosmology. Whether these alignments were fully intentional, partially symbolic, or somewhat coincidental remains debated. But astronomy clearly played an important role in Egyptian religious thinking. Then there are the spaces we still cannot fully explain. In recent years, scientists using muon scanning technology, a method that detects cosmic particles passing through stone, identified a large hidden void inside the Great Pyramid that had previously been unknown. No one knows exactly why this empty space exists. It may reduce structural pressure. It may connect to unfinished construction plans. Or it could represent something ceremonial not yet understood. The discovery was a reminder that even after centuries of study, the pyramids are still capable of surprising us. And perhaps even more haunting is the fact that many pyramids were entered repeatedly throughout history by tomb robbers. The image of untouched chambers filled with treasure is mostly a fantasy created by rare discoveries like Tutankhamun's tomb centuries later. Most royal tombs were looted long ago. Gold disappeared. Precious objects vanished. Even mummies were often damaged or destroyed by grave robbers searching for valuables hidden among wrappings and burial equipment. The Egyptians understood this danger. Many tomb passages were intentionally confusing. Hidden doors, sealed corridors, false chambers, and massive stone plugs were designed to slow intruders. But over centuries, human greed usually found a way inside eventually. Which raises another fascinating possibility. Perhaps the pyramids were never only about protecting treasure. Their true purpose may have been psychological as much as physical. They projected power, stability, permanence. Even stripped of gold and burial goods, the pyramids still achieved something extraordinary. They forced future generations to remember the rulers who built them. And in Egyptian belief, to be remembered was deeply connected to immortality itself. That idea changes how the pyramids feel once the sun begins to set across the Giza Plateau. The stones glow softly beneath fading light, while the desert grows quiet around them. Modern Cairo stretches nearby now, loud and crowded, but the pyramids remain strangely detached from ordinary time. Wind moves across the sand much as it did thousands of years ago. Shadows lengthen along the same angles once watched by priests, laborers, and kings whose names are still spoken because these monuments survived. And maybe that was the real victory. Not simply engineering, not even religion, but survival against time itself. Because nearly every civilization eventually disappears. Cities collapse, languages vanish, empires fade into dust. Yet somehow, the pyramids continue standing at the edge of the desert, refusing to fully surrender their secrets. And perhaps that is why people still stare at them with the same mixture of awe and confusion after more than 4,000 years. Not because we believe the pyramids are impossible, but because they remind us what human beings become capable of when they decide to build something meant to outlive them forever. When most people imagine ancient Egypt, they picture kings wrapped in gold, towering pyramids glowing beneath the desert sun, or priests walking through enormous stone temples filled with incense and shadow. But those images only capture a tiny fraction of the civilization that existed along the Nile. Because behind every monument stood millions of ordinary people whose lives were far more complicated, exhausting, and surprisingly familiar than many modern depictions suggest. And in some ways, that ordinary world may be even more fascinating than the monuments themselves. If you wandered into an Egyptian town during the height of the Old or Middle Kingdom, the first thing you would probably notice would not be silence or mystery. It would be movement. The Nile carried constant activity along its banks. Fishing boats drifted through shallow reeds. Farmers guided animals through muddy fields darkened by floodwater. Children ran barefoot across narrow streets between mud brick homes, while traders shouted prices beneath woven canopies protecting them from the heat. Ancient Egypt was deeply organized, but it was never frozen or motionless. It was alive. Most Egyptians lived close to the Nile because nearly everything depended on it. Beyond the fertile strip near the river, the desert arrived quickly and without mercy. Villages clustered tightly around farmland, canals, and storage areas where grain could be protected during difficult years. Houses were usually built from mud brick, a practical material made from Nile mud mixed with straw and dried beneath the sun. Stone was reserved mostly for temples, tombs, and structures meant to last forever. Ordinary life existed in buildings people understood would eventually crack, collapse, and be rebuilt again. That contrast says something important about Egyptian society. The eternal world belonged to the gods and the dead. The living adapted to something far less permanent. Inside these homes, life could be crowded. Wealthier families had larger houses with multiple rooms, storage spaces, courtyards, and occasionally small gardens. Poorer families often lived in compact structures with limited ventilation, especially during intense summer heat. Many rooftops doubled as sleeping areas during hot nights when indoor air became unbearable. The smell of smoke from cooking fires drifted constantly through narrow streets, mixing with river mud, livestock, sweat, beer, fish, and perfume oils. And ancient Egypt almost certainly smelled far stronger than most movies ever portray. Cleanliness mattered deeply to Egyptians, especially among the upper classes. Bathing was common when water was available, and scented oils were used not only for status, but for comfort in a hot climate. Priests shaved their bodies regularly as part of ritual purity practices. Wealthier Egyptians wore perfumes made from flowers, herbs, and resins imported through long-distance trade. Yet even with these efforts, daily life near dense populations, animals, and open water systems would have created an atmosphere far more earthy and physical than the polished marble image many people imagine today. Food shaped daily routines as much as religion did. Bread and beer formed the foundation of the Egyptian diet for much of the population. Beer, in particular, was not simply recreational. It was safer than stagnant water in many situations and provided calories and nutrients essential for laborers working under the sun. Egyptian bread was often coarse and could contain tiny fragments of sand or stone from grinding tools, which may explain why many ancient Egyptian skeletons show severe dental wear by middle age. Fish from the Nile were common, along with onions, garlic, lentils, dates, figs, and various grains. Wealthier Egyptians enjoyed more meat, including cattle, ducks, and geese, while poorer families relied more heavily on vegetables and bread-based meals. Still, even basic meals reflected something remarkable about Egyptian civilization: stability. Compared to many ancient societies vulnerable to constant famine and warfare, Egypt's predictable agricultural cycles often produced reliable food supplies for long stretches of time. That stability allowed Egyptian society to become highly specialized. Not everyone farmed. Some became scribes, craftsmen, priests, builders, merchants, sailors, physicians, or administrators. And among these professions, scribes occupied a particularly powerful position. Writing in ancient Egypt was difficult to master, requiring years of training in hieroglyphs and administrative scripts. Literacy created access to government, religion, and wealth. A skilled scribe could avoid the harshest physical labor and move upward socially in ways impossible for many farmers. Ancient Egyptian texts sometimes openly describe manual labor as exhausting and miserable compared to the life of a scribe. Whether exaggerated or not, these writings reveal a society already highly aware of social hierarchy. Yet Egypt's class system could also be surprisingly flexible in certain ways. Women in ancient Egypt appear to have possessed more legal and economic rights than women in many later civilizations. They could own property, inherit wealth, initiate divorce, run businesses, and participate in legal agreements. Elite women sometimes held enormous political influence behind palace walls, even when official records focused mostly on male rulers. This does not mean Egyptian society was equal by modern standards. Far from it. But compared to neighboring civilizations during similar periods, Egyptian women often operated with a degree of legal independence that still surprises historians today. Children entered this world early. Many worked from young ages, helping families with farming, fishing, household labor, or trade. Wealthier children sometimes received education, particularly boys destined for administrative roles. Toys discovered in tombs suggest that children still played games, used dolls, and enjoyed entertainment despite the hardships surrounding them. But life expectancy remained fragile. Disease spread easily near water systems. Parasites from the Nile affected many communities. Injuries from labor, accidents, or infections could become deadly without modern medicine. Egyptian physicians possessed surprisingly advanced practical knowledge in some areas, including wound treatment, bone setting, and herbal remedies. Yet they still operated within a worldview deeply connected to religion and spiritual forces. Illness was often seen as both physical and supernatural at the same time. That blending of practical reality and spiritual interpretation appears everywhere in Egyptian daily life. A farmer planting crops might also carry protective amulets. A pregnant woman could seek medical care while also praying to protective deities associated with childbirth. Dreams were sometimes treated seriously enough to require interpretation. Omens, symbols, and rituals existed alongside mathematics, engineering, and administration without contradiction in the Egyptian mind. And perhaps that mixture is part of what makes ancient Egypt feel so strangely modern and ancient at once. Because despite their extraordinary monuments, most Egyptians still worried about ordinary things: food shortages, taxes, family conflicts, illness, weather, debt, political instability. Some surviving letters from ancient Egypt sound unexpectedly recognizable today. Complaints about lazy workers, unreliable deliveries, difficult supervisors, or exhausting responsibilities. History often compresses civilizations into symbols, but real societies are built from ordinary frustrations repeated millions of times. Markets along the Nile must have been especially chaotic places. Traders sold pottery, fish, oils, cloth, jewelry, livestock, sandals, baskets, cosmetics, and imported goods arriving from distant regions. Egyptian trade networks stretched surprisingly far, reaching Nubia to the south, the Levant to the northeast, and beyond. Gold, incense, cedar wood, ivory, and exotic animals moved through these routes, connecting Egypt to a much larger world than many people imagine. And with trade came ideas. Foreign influences entered Egypt slowly, but constantly, though Egyptian culture often absorbed outside elements while still maintaining its own strong identity. That cultural confidence may partly explain why Egyptian civilization remained recognizable across such enormous spans of time. Yet beneath the stability, there was always vulnerability hiding nearby. The Nile could fail. Low flood years threatened harvests. Political corruption weakened administrations. Local officials competed for influence. Workers sometimes went unpaid. In later periods, surviving records even describe labor strikes when food rations failed to arrive on time. Egypt's apparent permanence depended on maintaining delicate systems that could break under enough pressure. And perhaps the Egyptians understood that better than anyone, because everywhere around them stood reminders of mortality. Tombs lined the desert edges beside living cities. Funerary rituals were woven into daily existence. Death was not hidden away from society. It remained physically and spiritually close at all times. The boundary between the living and the dead often felt thin in Egyptian culture, almost conversational. Families visited tombs. Food offerings were left for deceased relatives. Names of the dead were spoken aloud to preserve memory. To vanish completely, to be forgotten, was one of the greatest fears imaginable. That fear shaped Egyptian civilization just as strongly as ambition did. As evening settled over the Nile, Daily life slowed beneath fading sunlight. Workers returned home, carrying tools across dusty roads. Boats drifted quietly along darkening water. Oil lamps flickered behind mud brick walls, while desert winds moved softly beyond the edges of the fields. Somewhere in the distance, priests performed rituals inside temple chambers, while farmers prepared for another flood season that would determine survival once again. And in those moments, ancient Egypt probably felt less like a distant legendary civilization and more like what it truly was: a fragile human world suspended between abundance and catastrophe, permanence and collapse, life and death. A civilization that built monuments for eternity, while ordinary people struggled every day simply to endure the next season beside the river that gave them everything. In ancient Egypt, power was never meant to look ordinary. A king was not simply a political leader sitting on a throne giving orders to officials. To the Egyptian mind, the ruler existed somewhere between human and divine, standing in a space that blurred the line between government, religion, and cosmic balance itself. The pharaoh was expected to command armies, oversee harvests, judge disputes, communicate with the gods, and somehow keep the entire universe in harmony all at once. And for thousands of years, millions of people accepted that idea as completely natural. That may be one of the strangest things about ancient Egypt. The civilization did not merely obey its rulers, it built an entire worldview around them. If you had entered an Egyptian temple during the height of the New Kingdom, you would have seen enormous walls covered in carved scenes of pharaohs standing beside gods nearly as equals. Kings towered above enemies in battle reliefs, grasping defeated captives by the hair, while divine figures handed them weapons, blessings, or symbols of eternal life. These images were not simply decoration or propaganda in the modern sense. To many Egyptians, they reflected a deeper truth about reality itself. The pharaoh was believed to help hold back chaos. That idea appears again and again throughout Egyptian history. Beyond the fertile Nile Valley lay deserts, storms, disease, invasion, famine, and death, forces that threatened stability at every moment. Egyptian religion often described the universe as a fragile balance constantly resisting collapse into disorder. And standing at the center of that balance was the ruler. This helps explain why Egyptian kingship became so ceremonial and carefully controlled. Every movement, crown, title, and ritual carried symbolic meaning. Even the pharaoh's clothing communicated cosmic authority. The white crown represented Upper Egypt in the south. The red crown symbolized Lower Egypt in the north. Combined together, they represented the unification of the kingdom itself. The crook and flail, held by many pharaohs, symbolized leadership and discipline, linking the king to both shepherd and ruler. Nothing about the image was accidental, but behind the symbolism stood real human beings, some brilliant, some ruthless, some fragile, and some almost completely erased from memory. Many pharaohs inherited power through bloodlines, though succession was rarely as simple as later monuments suggest. Royal families were often filled with rival wives, competing heirs, political factions, and dangerous uncertainty hiding behind palace walls. Official inscriptions presented smooth transitions of power because Egyptian rulers wanted history to appear stable and eternal. But archaeology and surviving records hint at periods of tension, conspiracies, assassinations, and sudden disappearances that royal propaganda tried to hide. The palace itself was probably far less serene than the monuments outside it. And perhaps no Egyptian ruler better represents the strange mixture of human ambition and divine authority than Khufu, the pharaoh associated with the Great Pyramid at Giza. Today, millions know his pyramid, yet almost surprisingly little is known with certainty about the man himself. Later Greek writers described him as harsh or tyrannical, though those accounts appeared long after his death and may not be reliable. Egyptian records from his own era are limited. What survives most clearly is not his personality, but the monument that carried his name through history. In a way, that was the goal. The pharaoh's individual humanity mattered less than the permanence of kingship itself. And still, certain rulers left impressions too large to disappear entirely. Centuries after Khufu, Egypt would produce figures like Hatshepsut, one of the most fascinating rulers in ancient history. A woman ruling as pharaoh presented challenges within a system deeply tied to male royal imagery. Yet, Hatshepsut managed to govern successfully for decades during a relatively stable and prosperous period. Statues often portrayed her with the traditional false beard and masculine royal symbolism normally associated with male kings. This was not necessarily an attempt to deceive people about her identity. Instead, it may reflect how tightly Egyptian kingship was connected to sacred roles and visual traditions already established over centuries. Power in Egypt depended partly on fitting into a cosmic structure larger than any one individual. And that structure could become dangerous when challenged. One of the most dramatic examples came during the reign of Akhenaten, a pharaoh whose religious revolution still puzzles historians today. Before his rule, Egyptian religion involved a vast network of gods connected to nature, death, fertility, war, and cosmic order. Temples controlled enormous wealth and influence. But Akhenaten attempted something extraordinary. He elevated the sun disk Aten above traditional Egyptian gods and radically transformed state religion around this new focus. Temples changed. Artistic styles shifted. Old religious systems were weakened. Entire power structures suddenly became unstable. Some scholars see Akhenaten as one of history's earliest examples of near monotheism. Others argue the situation was more complicated and that traditional gods never fully disappeared during his reign. But what seems clear is that his changes disrupted Egypt deeply enough that later rulers aggressively reversed many of them after his death. His statues were damaged. His name was excluded from king lists. Monuments associated with him were dismantled or repurposed. In ancient Egypt, erasing someone from history could be a form of destruction almost worse than death itself. And few rulers demonstrate this better than Tutankhamun. Ironically, Tutankhamun became one of the most famous pharaohs in modern history, not because of major military victories or revolutionary achievements, but largely because his tomb survived relatively intact. He ruled briefly and died young, likely around 19 years old. His burial chamber was modest compared to some earlier kings. Yet, when British archaeologist Howard Carter discovered the tomb in 1922, the treasures inside stunned the world. Golden shrines, jewelry, chariots, weapons, furniture, ritual objects. For modern audiences, the discovery created an almost supernatural fascination with ancient Egypt that still exists today. Newspapers filled with stories about curses and mysterious deaths connected to the tomb's opening. Most historians dismiss the so-called curse of the Pharaohs as exaggeration fueled by media sensationalism and coincidence. But the public obsession revealed something deeper. People were not simply fascinated by Egyptian wealth. They were fascinated by the idea of immortality. Because Egyptian rulers were obsessed with defeating death itself. Everything surrounding pharaohs, temples, statues, pyramids, rituals, names carved into stone, pointed toward permanence. Kings were not meant to vanish like ordinary humans. Their souls were expected to continue existing among the gods. Their memory had to survive. Their bodies had to remain intact. Entire industries formed around preserving royal eternity. And yet, history repeatedly reminds us how fragile that dream really was. Many royal tombs were robbed, mummies damaged, names erased. Dynasties collapsed into civil wars and invasions. Some pharaohs who once commanded enormous power are now little more than broken fragments of inscriptions buried beneath sand. Even divine kingship could not fully protect people from time. Still, Egyptian rulers understood something psychologically powerful long before modern political systems did. Spectacle shapes belief. Monumental architecture, ritual ceremonies, visual symbolism, and controlled public imagery all reinforced authority. When ordinary Egyptians looked upon massive temples covered in scenes of gods blessing the pharaoh, they were not just seeing religion. They were seeing a carefully maintained vision of cosmic order made visible in stone. And for long stretches of history, it worked. Egypt remained remarkably stable compared to many neighboring civilizations, constantly torn apart by shifting borders and competing states. That stability gave pharaohs enormous influence, but it also created pressure. If harvests failed, foreign enemies invaded, or disease spread, people could interpret these disasters as signs that the ruler had lost divine favor. In other words, being treated like a god came with terrifying expectations. Some pharaohs rose to those expectations through military success or political skill. Ramses II, for example, projected power so aggressively through monuments and inscriptions that his legacy endured for centuries after his death. Massive statues of him still dominate temple entrances today. Battle scenes portrayed him charging fearlessly into combat, though historians debate how accurately these images reflected reality. Egyptian royal art rarely admitted weakness. The king always appeared victorious. But beneath that image, real fears constantly existed. Palace conspiracies were genuine threats. Some royal wives and officials appear to have plotted assassinations. succession crises could destabilize entire dynasties. Priests gained enormous influence during certain periods, occasionally rivaling royal authority itself. Foreign powers pressed against Egypt's borders as centuries passed, and eventually, the illusion of eternal control began to crack. By the time later dynasties struggled against invasions from Assyrians, Persians, Greeks, and eventually Romans, the age of the god kings was fading. Cleopatra VII, often remembered mainly through Roman stories and modern films, ruled during one of Egypt's final independent chapters before Roman domination transformed the ancient kingdom forever. Yet even after political power disappeared, the image of the pharaoh survived, perhaps because the idea itself remains strangely compelling. A ruler who controls not only government, but the balance of the cosmos. A civilization willing to carve mountains of stone to preserve royal memory. A world where names spoken aloud could keep souls alive forever. As night settled over ancient Egypt, temple fires flickered against colossal statues, while priests whispered rituals inside sacred chambers hidden from ordinary eyes. Somewhere beyond the torchlight, the Nile continued flowing through darkness exactly as it had for thousands of years before any pharaoh ever ruled. And perhaps that is the most haunting part of all. The kings believed they commanded eternity. But in the end, the river outlived every one of them. As darkness settled over ancient Egypt, the temples did not become quieter. In many ways, they became more alive. Oil lamps flickered against enormous stone walls, covered in carvings that seemed to move beneath shifting firelight. The smell of incense drifted through narrow corridors, while priests whispered prayers in chambers hidden deep inside structures most ordinary people would never enter. Outside, the Nile flowed silently beneath the stars. But inside the temples, another world existed. One filled with gods, rituals, symbols, and unseen forces believed to shape every part of existence itself. To the ancient Egyptians, the universe was not random. The river flooded for a reason. The sun rose for a reason. People lived, suffered, and died according to patterns connected to powers larger than themselves. Religion was not separated from politics, farming, medicine, astronomy, or daily survival. It surrounded everything. A fisherman casting nets into the Nile, a mother protecting her child from illness, a king preparing for war, all existed within the same spiritual landscape. And that landscape was crowded with gods. Some Egyptian deities represented natural forces. Others embodied abstract ideas like wisdom, chaos, fertility, protection, or death. Certain gods were worshipped more strongly in specific cities, while others gained influence during different dynasties. Over thousands of years, Egyptian religion constantly evolved, absorbed local traditions, merged deities together, and reshaped older beliefs into new forms. There was never one perfectly fixed version of the Egyptian pantheon, which may explain why it feels so mysterious even now. Because unlike some ancient religions built around rigid doctrines, Egyptian belief often embraced complexity instead of eliminating it. Contradictions could exist side by side without needing a single, final explanation. A god might appear as human in one temple, animal-headed in another, or combined with entirely different deities elsewhere. Multiple creation stories existed at the same time in different regions. The Egyptians seemed less concerned with simplifying the universe than with navigating its layers. And perhaps no god stood higher within those layers than Ra, the sun god. Every morning, as sunlight spread across the Nile Valley, Egyptians saw more than a natural event. They saw proof that cosmic order had survived another night. According to Egyptian belief, Ra traveled across the sky during the day before descending into the underworld after sunset, where he faced dangerous forces of chaos in darkness. Each dawn represented victory, not just of light over darkness, but of order over destruction itself. This idea shaped Egyptian psychology in profound ways. The universe was not guaranteed to remain stable forever. It required constant renewal, and the gods were deeply involved in that struggle. Among the most important stories in Egyptian religion was the myth of Osiris, Isis, and Horus. A story filled with betrayal, death, resurrection, and revenge. Osiris, often associated with kingship and the afterlife, was murdered by his brother Set, a chaotic and violent force linked to deserts, storms, and disorder. According to the myth, Osiris's body was scattered into pieces across Egypt before being recovered by Isis, whose determination and magical power allowed Osiris to live again in the afterlife. Their son Horus would later confront Set, continuing an endless struggle between stability and chaos that mirrored the Egyptian view of the world itself. What makes these myths fascinating is not only their symbolism, but how deeply they connected to political authority. Pharaohs were often associated with Horus during life and Osiris after death, linking royal power directly to cosmic cycles of death and renewal. Religion was not merely explaining nature, it was reinforcing the structure of Egyptian civilization at every level. And death stood at the center of much of it. Modern audiences often focus on Egyptian mummies and tombs because they seem exotic or unsettling. But for Egyptians, preparing for the afterlife was not obsession in the modern sense, it was practicality. Death was expected to be another stage of existence, requiring preparation, protection, and guidance. Entire rituals developed around helping souls survive the dangerous journey beyond death. One of the most recognizable figures in this process was Anubis, the jackal-headed god associated with embalming and funerary rites. Jackals were frequently seen near cemeteries along the desert edge, which may explain why Egyptians connected them with death and protection of the dead. Anubis guided souls through transitions that terrified ordinary people, standing as a guardian between worlds. And that boundary between life and death often felt surprisingly thin in Egyptian belief. Tombs were not viewed as empty places. Statues, offerings, prayers, and names carved into stone allowed the dead to continue existing in spiritual form. Families returned to burial sites, bringing food and gifts for deceased relatives. Priests performed rituals intended to sustain souls indefinitely. To destroy someone's name or damage their tomb was not only political revenge, It threatened spiritual annihilation. That fear gave enormous power to memory itself. But perhaps the most visually striking aspect of Egyptian religion was the appearance of its gods. Falcon-headed gods, crocodile gods, cat goddesses, ibis-headed scribes of wisdom. To modernize, these forms can seem bizarre or symbolic in abstract ways. Yet for Egyptians, animals represented specific qualities already visible in nature. Falcons soared above the earth with terrifying precision. Crocodiles controlled dangerous waters. Cats moved silently through darkness, protecting grain stores from vermin and snakes. The gods did not merely resemble animals. They embodied forces humans already recognized around them. And nowhere did these divine forces feel more concentrated than inside Egyptian temples. Unlike many modern religious buildings designed for large public gatherings, Egyptian temples often restricted access deeper into sacred areas. Outer courtyards could be busy and public during festivals, but inner sanctuaries became increasingly exclusive. The holiest chambers were dark, enclosed, and accessible only to priests and select officials. At the center often stood a sacred statue believed to house divine presence during rituals. The average Egyptian may never have seen these inner chambers directly. That mystery was intentional. Religion in Egypt relied heavily on atmosphere. Towering columns resembling papyrus reeds, incense smoke filling dim halls, torchlight reflecting against gold surfaces, sacred chants echoing through stone corridors. Temples were designed not simply to impress people intellectually, but to overwhelm the senses and create the feeling of entering a space outside ordinary reality. And for the priests serving there, rituals were treated with astonishing seriousness. Daily temple ceremonies involved washing divine statues, dressing them, presenting food offerings, burning incense, and reciting prayers with exact precision. These rituals were believed to help maintain cosmic stability itself. A neglected temple was not merely disrespectful, it could threaten the balance between order and chaos. At the same time, ordinary Egyptians practiced religion in more personal ways too. Small household shrines existed inside homes. Protective amulets were worn against illness, bad luck, or spiritual danger. Pregnant women prayed to specific goddesses for safe childbirth. Workers leaving for dangerous labor might carry symbols believed to attract protection. Religion in Egypt was not distant philosophy. It was woven into survival. And perhaps one of the most revealing details is what the Egyptians feared most. Contrary to modern horror stories about curses and monsters, Egyptian religion was often less concerned with punishment than with disorder. Chaos terrified them. Famine, drought, social collapse, being forgotten after death, losing one's place in the balance of existence. Even the monstrous serpent, Apophis, one of Egypt's great symbols of chaos, represented forces threatening to consume order entirely. Every night, as Ra journeyed through darkness, Apophis attempted to stop the sun from rising again. Priests performed rituals meant to symbolically weaken this creature and ensure cosmic renewal at dawn. The Egyptians were living beside immense uncertainty every day. The Nile could fail. Foreign invasions could arrive. Disease could spread silently through crowded cities. Religion gave shape to these fears, while also offering reassurance that balance could survive if rituals, rulers, and gods all continued functioning together. Still, Egyptian religion was never completely stable. Over centuries, gods rose and fell in importance. Local cults competed for influence. Priests accumulated enormous wealth and political power. Certain rulers attempted religious reforms, sometimes aggressively. The spiritual world of Egypt was always shifting beneath its appearance of permanence. And perhaps that is why so much about it still feels difficult to fully understand. Because Egyptian religion was not built around simple belief alone. It was built around atmosphere, symbolism, repetition, memory, fear, nature, kingship, and survival, all fused together across thousands of years. As night deepened over the Nile, temple doors slowly closed, while stars appeared above the desert. Somewhere in the darkness, priests carried sacred lamps through hidden holes, while distant hymns echoed against stone, carved with the names of gods whose worship lasted longer than many civilizations themselves. And for the people of ancient Egypt, those gods were never abstract ideas floating somewhere beyond the world. They were already here, in the river, the sun, the animals, the storms, the dead, and the endless rhythm of life continuing beneath the shadow of eternity. In ancient Egypt, death was never treated as an ending. It was a transition, a crossing into another form of existence that could be beautiful, terrifying, or completely disastrous, depending on how well someone prepared for it. And few civilizations in human history prepared for death with the same intensity, precision, and obsession as the Egyptians did. To modern eyes, their tombs can seem eerie and almost unreal. Silent chambers hidden beneath stone, bodies wrapped in linen, gold masks staring through darkness after thousands of years. But for the Egyptians, these rituals were not strange at all. They were practical, necessary. Survival depended on them. Because according to Egyptian belief, dying was only the beginning of a much longer journey. When the sun disappeared beyond the western desert each evening, Egyptians saw more than nightfall. The west became symbolically tied to death because that was where the sun itself appeared to descend before traveling through the underworld. Cemeteries and tomb complexes were often built on the western side of the Nile for this reason, stretching into desert cliffs and dry valleys where heat and sand naturally slowed decay. Long before elaborate mummification techniques existed, the desert itself had already taught the Egyptians something important. Bodies buried directly in hot, dry sand sometimes remained partially preserved by natural dehydration. Skin tightened, hair survived, features lingered longer than expected. To people deeply focused on the afterlife, this must have felt significant. Preservation mattered. Over centuries, Egyptians began trying to improve upon what nature was already doing on its own. Early burials gradually evolved into increasingly complex systems designed to protect the body from destruction. Because, unlike many later belief systems focused mainly on the soul, Egyptian spirituality tied existence closely to the physical form itself. A damaged or decayed body could create dangers for the spirit after death. And eventually, this led to one of the most famous practices in history: mummification. The process was long, expensive, and deeply ritualized. Wealth influenced how elaborate the procedure became, but among elites and royalty, preservation could involve weeks of preparation, carried out by specialized embalmers who understood anatomy surprisingly well through centuries of experience. The first stage usually involved washing the body carefully before removing internal organs that decomposed quickly in Egypt's climate. Through a small incision in the abdomen, embalmers extracted organs such as the lungs, stomach, liver, and intestines. These were often preserved separately inside canopic jars protected by divine figures associated with the afterlife. One detail still unsettles many modern people. The brain was commonly removed through the nose using hooked instruments, and yet the heart was usually left inside the body. To Egyptians, the heart was considered the center of memory, intelligence, emotion, and identity itself. The brain appears to have held far less spiritual importance. This reversal feels strange today because modern science places consciousness inside the brain. But ancient Egyptians understood the human self very differently. After organ removal, the body was covered and packed with natron, a naturally occurring salt mixture capable of drawing moisture from flesh. Over many weeks, the body slowly dried out in the desert heat until decomposition dramatically slowed. Then came oils, resins, perfumes, linen wrappings, protective amulets, prayers, and funerary masks carefully layered around the preserved form. Mummification was not simply medical preservation, it was transformation. The dead were being prepared to enter another state of existence. And according to Egyptian belief, that next world was not automatically peaceful. The journey after death involved danger, uncertainty, and judgment. One of the most important surviving texts connected to this process is what modern scholars call the Book of the Dead, though the ancient Egyptians themselves used different names for these collections of spells, prayers, and instructions. These texts were often buried alongside the deceased to help guide souls through the underworld. Some passages sound almost like spiritual maps. Others function more like protective passwords or ritual defenses against supernatural threats waiting in darkness. Among the most famous moments in Egyptian afterlife belief was the weighing of the heart ceremony. In this vision of judgment, the dead person's heart was weighed against the feather of Ma'at, representing truth, balance, and cosmic order. If the heart remained light and pure, the soul could continue into eternal existence. But if it was burdened by wrongdoing, it risked being consumed by a terrifying creature often called Amit, part lion, part crocodile, part hippopotamus. To Egyptians, morality was not only social behavior, it was cosmic balance. And the afterlife reflected that balance. Yet even within these beliefs, there were layers of mystery historians still debate today. Egyptian ideas about the soul were not entirely simple or consistent across different periods. Terms like Ka, Ba, and Ak referred to different aspects of spiritual existence, though exact translations remain difficult because Egyptian concepts do not always map neatly onto modern language. Some aspects of the self stayed connected to the tomb. Others traveled freely between worlds. some transformed after successful passage through the afterlife. In many ways, Egyptian spirituality seems less interested in escaping the world than in continuing within it permanently. That may explain why tombs were filled with ordinary objects from daily life. Furniture, clothing, jewelry, food, games, weapons, cosmetics, statues of servants, even miniature boats. The dead were expected to need these things again. Inside royal tombs especially, entire walls became covered in painted scenes showing idealized versions of eternal existence. Fields of abundance, family gatherings, offerings, hunting scenes, and encounters with gods. Some chambers glowed with deep blues, reds, and golds that remained astonishingly vivid even after thousands of years sealed underground. But beneath this beauty lay enormous fear. Because if tombs were damaged, if names disappeared, or if bodies were destroyed, the future of the soul itself could become uncertain. This fear partly explains why tomb security became increasingly elaborate. Hidden chambers, sealed corridors, false passages, and massive stone barriers were designed to protect burials from thieves. Yet, despite these efforts, grave robbery became incredibly common throughout Egyptian history. Gold tempted people too strongly. Economic collapse sometimes pushed even officials and priests into organized tomb theft. Ancient records survive describing investigations into robbed royal tombs, including interrogations of thieves who admitted breaking into burial chambers and stripping mummies of jewelry and precious metals. Even death could not escape corruption. And still, despite centuries of robbery, some tombs remained astonishingly preserved. When Howard Carter uncovered Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, the discovery sent shockwaves across the world. The sealed chambers contained thousands of objects buried for over 3,000 years. Golden shrines filled cramped rooms. Chariots leaned against walls. Ritual beds shaped like sacred animals stood frozen beneath dust untouched for centuries. For many modern observers, it felt almost supernatural, and the strange rumors began almost immediately. After several people connected to the excavation died unexpectedly in the following years, newspapers exploded with stories about a curse of the Pharaohs. Ancient warnings inscribed near tombs fueled public imagination further, though many of the supposed curse inscriptions were exaggerated or entirely fabricated later by the press. Most historians see the curse stories as a mixture of coincidence, media sensationalism, colonial anxiety, and fascination with ancient death rituals. Still, the atmosphere surrounding Egyptian tombs remains powerful, even now. Perhaps because they confront modern people with something deeply uncomfortable: the desire to survive time itself. The Egyptians understood something many civilizations eventually forget. Human beings do not only fear death, they fear disappearance, being forgotten, vanishing without trace. Mummification became one solution to that fear, and strangely, it worked. Thousands of years later, faces still emerge from linen wrappings beneath museum lights. CT scans reveal broken bones, illnesses, dental disease, healed injuries, even traces of emotional stress carved into preserved bodies. Modern science continues extracting information from mummies that the Egyptians themselves could never have imagined possible. Some mummies show evidence of arthritis from hard labor. Others reveal signs of obesity, parasites, heart disease, or violent injuries. Royal mummies have allowed researchers to investigate family relationships, genetic conditions, and possible causes of death. In some cases, modern forensic technology has reopened mysteries sealed since antiquity. And yet, many questions remain unresolved. Who exactly built certain tombs? How many hidden chambers still exist beneath Egypt's deserts? Were some burial rituals symbolic, while others were taken literally? Did ordinary Egyptians fully believe every detail about the afterlife? Or did belief vary privately from person to person, the way it often does in modern societies? History rarely leaves perfect answers. As night deepened across ancient Egypt, funeral processions once moved slowly toward the desert, carrying bodies wrapped in linen, while mourners whispered prayers beneath torchlight. Priests recited sacred words believed powerful enough to guide souls through darkness itself. Somewhere beyond the tomb entrances, the Nile continued flowing beneath the stars, while hidden chambers sealed shut one final time. And inside those chambers, the Egyptians left behind more than bodies. They left behind one of humanity's oldest and most powerful attempts to defeat oblivion itself. Even after centuries of excavation, scanning technology, satellite mapping, and modern archaeology, ancient Egypt still refuses to fully explain itself. That may be the most unsettling thing about it. Most ancient civilizations slowly become clearer over time as more discoveries are made. But Egypt often seems to do the opposite. Every answer uncovers new questions buried underneath it, as though the civilization was designed to remain partially hidden forever. And nowhere is that feeling stronger than inside the pyramids themselves. For generations, archaeologists believed they understood the general internal structure of the Great Pyramid at Giza: the king's chamber, the queen's chamber, ascending passages, narrow shafts, hidden cavities. These spaces had been mapped for years. But in 2017, researchers using muon scanning technology detected a massive, unexplained void deep within the structure. Invisible to the human eye, this empty space had remained hidden for thousands of years behind millions of tons of stone. No one knows exactly why it exists. Some researchers suspect it may reduce structural pressure inside the pyramid. Others think it could be part of an unfinished architectural design or an undiscovered ceremonial chamber. More speculative theories suggest hidden passages may still exist beyond known sections of the pyramid. What makes the discovery so fascinating is not necessarily the void itself, but what it represents. Even today, humanity still cannot fully see inside one of the most famous buildings on Earth. And that uncertainty changes how the pyramids feel. They stop becoming historical objects and start feeling more like locked systems, structures deliberately hiding information from the future. The same feeling surrounds the Great Sphinx. For thousands of years, the giant stone figure has stared silently across the Giza plateau, while wind slowly eroded its face and body. Most Egyptologists believe the Sphinx was likely built during the reign of Pharaoh Khafra, around 2500 BCE, partly because of its location near his pyramid complex and similarities in construction style. Yet debate continues around aspects of the monument that remain strangely difficult to explain completely. The missing nose became one of the most famous mysteries, though historical evidence strongly suggests it was damaged intentionally long after the Sphinx was built, rather than destroyed by Napoleon's army, as popular legend claims. Some medieval accounts describe acts of deliberate vandalism against the monument centuries earlier. Still, the loss of the face transformed the Sphinx psychologically. Its expression now feels incomplete, almost unsettling. But an even larger controversy emerged from erosion patterns along parts of the Sphinx enclosure. A small number of researchers have argued that some weathering appears more consistent with prolonged water exposure than simple desert wind erosion. Since heavy rainfall capable of producing such erosion would likely date back to periods before the traditional age of the pyramids, these claims sparked speculation that parts of the monument might be older than mainstream Egyptology currently accepts. Most Egyptologists remain unconvinced by these arguments, pointing instead toward alternative geological explanations and established archaeological evidence supporting the conventional timeline. Yet, the debate continues, because the Sphinx occupies a strange space between certainty and mystery. It is one of the most recognizable monuments on Earth, and still capable of provoking major disagreement. And perhaps that is exactly why ancient Egypt captures the imagination so powerfully. The civilization leaves just enough uncertainty for people to project possibilities into the gaps. Some of those possibilities become wildly exaggerated, of course. The internet is filled with theories about lost civilizations, hidden advanced technology, extraterrestrial intervention, and forgotten global empires connected to Egypt. Most mainstream historians reject these claims because there is overwhelming evidence that ancient Egyptians themselves built their monuments through organized labor, engineering skill, and centuries of accumulated knowledge. But the persistence of these theories reveals something psychologically interesting. Many modern people still struggle to accept how advanced ancient human societies could become without modern machines. And to be fair, some Egyptian achievements genuinely remain astonishing. The precision of pyramid alignment still surprises engineers. Certain stone cuts fit together with remarkable accuracy. Massive obelisks weighing hundreds of tons were transported across long distances without modern engines. Temple complexes were aligned with astronomical events in ways that required careful observation over generations. None of this necessarily requires supernatural explanations, but it does require respecting the intelligence of people living thousands of years ago. At the same time, there are mysteries far more subtle and difficult to sensationalize. Mysteries hidden inside language itself. Although Egyptian hieroglyphs were largely deciphered after the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, scholars still encounter symbols, phrases, and inscriptions whose exact meanings remain uncertain. Ancient languages rarely translate perfectly into modern concepts. Religious terms often carried multiple layers of symbolism that depended on context, ritual use, and cultural assumptions long vanished from living memory. Some inscriptions remain fragmented beyond recovery. Others describe rituals or beliefs so deeply tied to Egyptian worldview that modern interpretations remain partly speculative. In a few cases, scholars continue debating whether certain passages should be understood literally, symbolically, politically, or spiritually. The farther back in Egyptian history researchers travel, the thinner the surviving evidence becomes. And then there are the sounds. Inside certain chambers of Egyptian temples and pyramids, acoustics behave strangely. Narrow corridors amplify footsteps in unexpected ways. Deep rooms create low resonances that seem almost unnatural in darkness. Some researchers have explored whether Egyptian architects intentionally designed sacred spaces to manipulate sound and emotional atmosphere during rituals. There is no strong evidence for mystical energy chambers, as some fringe theories claim. But ancient builders clearly understood that architecture could shape psychological experience. Darkness, scale, echoes, incense smoke, torchlight, and silence all affected how people felt inside these spaces. And perhaps that emotional effect mattered as much as the structures themselves. Because Egypt was always a civilization deeply concerned with perception. Monuments projected permanence. Temples projected sacred authority. Tombs projected immortality. Yet beneath those carefully controlled images, uncertainty remained everywhere. For example, archaeologists still do not know how many tombs remain undiscovered beneath Egypt's deserts. Ground-penetrating radar and satellite imaging have revealed buried structures invisible from the surface, including possible hidden settlements, roads, and chambers beneath sand that shifted over thousands of years. Entire sections of ancient cities may still lie underground, waiting to be uncovered. The Nile Delta poses an even greater challenge. Moisture and dense modern populations have destroyed or buried enormous amounts of early Egyptian history. Organic materials decayed. Cities were rebuilt repeatedly over ancient foundations. In some cases, archaeologists know important locations likely existed, but cannot excavate them fully beneath modern development. This means there may be entire chapters of Egyptian civilization humanity has not read yet. And occasionally, discoveries emerge that completely reshape previous assumptions. The ancient city, sometimes called the Lost Golden City near Luxor, stunned archaeologists when major sections were uncovered after remaining buried for centuries beneath desert sand. Streets, workshops, homes, tools, jewelry, and everyday objects suddenly appeared almost frozen in time. Discoveries like this reveal how incomplete the historical picture still is despite generations of excavation. Even mummies continue producing surprises under modern technology. CT scans have revealed hidden injuries, diseases, surgical procedures, and genetic relationships impossible to detect in earlier eras. Some pharaohs thought to have died peacefully may have suffered violent trauma or chronic illness. Others carried genetic conditions possibly linked to royal intermarriage. Tiny details preserved inside wrapped bodies continue reopening historical questions centuries after those individuals died. And still, one mystery remains larger than all the others combined. Why does ancient Egypt continue affecting people so deeply? Other ancient civilizations built cities, fought wars, worshipped gods, and buried their dead. Yet Egypt creates a different emotional reaction, something closer to awe mixed with unease. Perhaps it is the scale of the monuments, or the dryness of the desert preserving traces of the past so vividly. Or maybe it is because Egyptian civilization focused so intensely on defeating time itself that fragments of its worldview still survive unusually intact. The faces remain. The names remain. The tombs remain. At night, when desert winds move across abandoned temples and moonlight touches the edges of pyramids older than most recorded history, it becomes easier to understand why so many mysteries gathered here in the first place. Ancient Egypt was not only trying to survive physically, it was trying to preserve memory against oblivion. And in some ways, it succeeded too well, because thousands of years later, humanity is still standing in the shadow of those monuments, asking the same question people have asked for centuries. What else is still hidden beneath the sand? For long stretches of its history, ancient Egypt appeared almost untouchable. The Nile flooded with predictable rhythm. Massive temples rose beside the river. Pharaohs ruled from palaces wrapped in gold and ceremony, while colossal statues projected the image of eternal stability. To people living inside the civilization, Egypt may have seemed protected by the gods themselves, isolated by deserts, defended by geography, and supported by one of the richest agricultural systems in the ancient world. But no civilization remains powerful forever. Beyond the Nile Valley, other kingdoms were rising. Armies were growing larger. Trade routes became contested. Droughts weakened entire regions. And slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, Egypt began drifting toward centuries of warfare, political instability, and eventual collapse. What makes this transformation so fascinating is that ancient Egypt was never originally designed as a heavily militarized empire. In its earlier periods, the civilization relied heavily on natural defenses. Deserts protected the east and west. The Mediterranean Sea shielded the north. The Nile itself functioned like a controlled corridor through difficult terrain. For centuries, this geography reduced the need for massive standing armies compared to neighboring regions constantly fighting over open land. But geography can create confidence, and confidence can become vulnerability. As neighboring civilizations expanded and technologies changed, Egypt faced enemies capable of crossing barriers once thought secure. Trade wealth attracted invasion. Gold mines in Nubia drew military campaigns southward. Control of routes connecting Africa, the Mediterranean, and the Near East became increasingly valuable. Egypt was no longer simply surviving beside the Nile. It was becoming an empire, competing for influence across entire regions. And empires require soldiers. Egyptian armies evolved dramatically over time. Early military forces were relatively simple, built around infantry carrying spears, axes, shields, bows, and clubs. But by the time of the New Kingdom, Egypt had transformed into a far more aggressive military state, capable of launching large campaigns deep into foreign territory. One reason for this shift was trauma. Around the 17th century BCE, a foreign group known as the Hyksos gained control over parts of northern Egypt. their origins remain debated, though they likely came from Western Asia through gradual migration and political expansion, rather than a single sudden invasion. What shocked Egypt was not only that outsiders seized territory, but that they introduced military technologies Egypt had not fully mastered yet. Most important among them, the horse and chariot. To modern audiences, chariots may seem ceremonial or primitive, but in the ancient world, they represented speed, mobility, and psychological shock. Lightweight chariots carrying archers could move rapidly across battlefields, strike from distance, and retreat before slower infantry reacted. Egypt quickly adapted this technology after driving out the Hyksos, and in doing so, transformed itself into a major military power. Soon, Egyptian pharaohs were no longer merely defending borders. They were conquering. Under rulers like Thutmose III, Egypt launched campaigns far into the Levant, extending influence across parts of modern Syria and beyond. Some historians describe Thutmose III as one of history's earliest military geniuses because of his aggressive strategies and ability to coordinate complex operations over large distances. Egyptian inscriptions portray him as fearless and unstoppable, though, like many royal records, they were designed partly to glorify the king. Still, there is little doubt Egypt became extraordinarily powerful during this era. Military victories brought wealth flooding back into the kingdom. Gold, tribute, prisoners, livestock, luxury goods, and access to valuable trade networks. Temples expanded using resources captured through conquest. Monumental building projects intensified. Pharaohs presented themselves not only as divine rulers, but as protectors defending cosmic order against foreign chaos beyond Egypt's borders. And nowhere does this image appear more dramatically than in the reign of Ramses II. Massive statues of Ramses still dominate Egyptian temples today, projecting confidence even after thousands of years. His reign lasted unusually long, and he filled Egypt with monuments celebrating his power. Among the most famous events associated with him was the Battle of Kadesh against the Hittite Empire around 1274 BCE, one of the largest chariot battles in ancient history. Egyptian inscriptions portray Ramses as almost superhuman during the battle, abandoned by his troops, yet charging courageously into enemy forces alone before achieving victory through divine strength and leadership. The carvings are cinematic, emotional, and clearly designed to impress. But modern historians suspect the reality was far more complicated. Many scholars believe the battle ended closer to a strategic stalemate than a decisive Egyptian victory. Both sides claimed success afterward. In fact, years later, Egypt and the Hittites negotiated one of the earliest known peace treaties in recorded history. Yet, what matters is not only what happened at Kadesh, but how Egypt chose to remember it. The pharaoh could never appear weak, because weakness threatened the entire illusion of divine kingship. And maintaining that illusion grew harder as centuries passed. Foreign threats intensified. Internal corruption spread through parts of the administration. Priests accumulated enormous wealth and influence, sometimes rivaling royal authority itself. Economic systems became strained by large military campaigns and monumental construction projects. Climate instability may also have played a role in wider regional collapse during parts of the Late Bronze Age, though historians continue debating the scale of these environmental pressures. Then came the Sea Peoples. Even now, historians remain uncertain exactly who they were. Egyptian records describe groups arriving from across the sea during periods of widespread instability around the eastern Mediterranean near the end of the Bronze Age. Cities burned, trade networks collapsed, entire kingdoms disappeared across the region within relatively short periods of time. Some scholars think the Sea Peoples were displaced populations driven by famine, drought, warfare, or economic collapse elsewhere. Others believe multiple groups became combined under one Egyptian label. What seems clear is that they represented part of a much larger breakdown affecting numerous civilizations simultaneously. Egypt survived these invasions better than many neighboring kingdoms. But survival came at a cost. The empire weakened, resources drained, political fragmentation increased, tomb robberies became more common, workers sometimes went unpaid. In one extraordinary surviving record from the reign of Ramses III, laborers building royal tombs organized what may be history's first documented labor strike after food rations failed to arrive. That detail feels surprisingly modern. Even inside one of history's most legendary civilizations, ordinary people eventually reached breaking points. And as central authority weakened, Egypt entered periods of division where rival rulers competed for power across different regions. Foreign influence grew stronger. Libyan dynasties, Nubian rulers, Assyrians, Persians, Greeks, and eventually Romans all gained control over Egypt at different stages. Each conquest layered new cultural influences onto the ancient civilization, while gradually eroding the independence of traditional pharaoh rule. Yet perhaps the most haunting part of Egypt's decline is how slowly it happened. Civilizations rarely collapse in a single dramatic moment. Instead, stability fades gradually while people still try to maintain the appearance of permanence. Temples continue functioning. Officials continue collecting taxes. Rituals continue beneath torchlight. But underneath the surface, systems weaken year after year until something finally breaks. Ancient Egypt experienced this repeatedly across its long history. And still, even during decline, the civilization retained enormous symbolic power. Foreign conquerors often adopted Egyptian traditions instead of destroying them outright. Nubian kings ruled as pharaohs. Alexander the Great embraced Egyptian religious symbolism after conquering the region. Greek rulers of the Ptolemaic dynasty presented themselves through traditional pharaoh imagery despite their Macedonian origins. Because by then, Egypt represented more than a kingdom. It represented legitimacy itself. And that brings the story inevitably to Cleopatra VII, perhaps the most famous figure associated with Egypt's final independent era. Modern culture often reduces Cleopatra to romance and political drama involving Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, but the reality was far more complicated. She was highly educated, politically skilled, multilingual, and ruling during an extraordinarily dangerous period when Rome dominated the Mediterranean world. Her defeat after the conflict with Octavian marked more than the death of a queen. It marked the end of ancient Egypt as an independent civilization ruled by pharaohs. After Rome absorbed Egypt, the ancient kingdom continued existing culturally for centuries. But the long era of divine kingship tied directly to the Nile had ended. And yet the strangest thing is this: the civilization never completely disappeared. Its temples survived in fragments. Its monuments endured storms and invasions. Its gods faded slowly into myth. Sand buried entire cities, while preserving others almost perfectly beneath the desert. The armies vanished. The palaces crumbled. But the image of Egypt remained powerful enough to outlive the empire itself. As night falls over ruined temples today, silence settles across battlefields where chariots once thundered beneath clouds of dust. Wind moves through broken columns where soldiers once carried banners honoring kings who believed their rule would last forever. Somewhere beneath the desert, forgotten weapons still lie buried beside bones whose names history no longer remembers. And perhaps that is the final irony of ancient Egypt. A civilization obsessed with permanence was ultimately conquered by the one force no empire ever escapes: time itself. Ancient Egypt is often imagined through the monuments that survived: the pyramids, the temples, the colossal statues still standing against the desert sky. But what makes Egypt truly haunting is not only what remained visible, it is what disappeared. Entire cities once filled with voices, marketplaces, ceremonies, workshops, and crowded streets now lie buried beneath sand, submerged underwater, or hidden beneath modern towns where people walk every day without realizing ancient worlds exist below their feet. And in some places, the desert still keeps those worlds almost perfectly sealed. There is something unsettling about that idea. A city can thrive for centuries, become the center of religion or trade or royal power, and then vanish so completely that future civilizations forget it was ever there at all. That happened repeatedly across Egypt. One of the most famous examples is Alexandria, the legendary city founded by Alexander the Great in 331 BCE. Unlike the older temple cities of Upper Egypt, Alexandria faced outward toward the Mediterranean world. Greek, Egyptian, Jewish, and later Roman cultures mixed together there in ways almost unmatched in the ancient world. The city became a center of learning, philosophy, mathematics, navigation, and trade. Ships crowded its harbors, carrying grain, papyrus, glass, spices, gold, and knowledge itself between continents. And towering above the harbor stood one of the most famous structures of antiquity, the Lighthouse of Alexandria. Ancient writers described it as almost unreal in scale. Built on the island of Pharaohs, the lighthouse may have risen over 300 feet tall, guiding ships safely toward the city, with firelight reflected across polished surfaces visible for enormous distances at sea. For sailors approaching Egypt after weeks crossing dangerous waters, the structure must have felt almost supernatural, emerging from the horizon at night. Yet today, the lighthouse is gone. Earthquakes damaged it repeatedly over centuries before it eventually collapsed into the Mediterranean. Divers exploring underwater sections of Alexandria later discovered enormous stone blocks and statues scattered beneath the harbor floor. Silent remains of monuments once viewed as wonders of the world. And Alexandria itself never truly disappeared all at once. Instead, parts of it slowly sank. That may be one of the strangest aspects of Egypt's lost cities. Many were not destroyed in dramatic apocalyptic moments. They faded gradually beneath shifting geography, rising water, earthquakes, political collapse, or drifting sand, until ordinary life moved elsewhere and memory weakened generation by generation. Nowhere does this feel more eerie than in the submerged ruins near the Egyptian coast, sometimes associated with the ancient cities of Thonis Heraklion and Canopus. For centuries, these places existed almost like legends, mentioned in fragmented texts and scattered historical references. Then, underwater archaeologists began discovering statues, temple remains, inscriptions, ships, and collapsed buildings deep beneath the Mediterranean seabed. Massive stone figures rested silently underwater beside broken columns covered in sea growth. Ancient anchors lay buried beneath sediment. Entire sections of a lost port city slowly emerged from darkness after more than 1,000 years hidden beneath water. What caused these cities to disappear remains partly debated, though earthquakes, rising seas, flooding, and unstable ground likely all contributed over time. The Nile Delta itself constantly changes shape through sediment movement and shifting waterways. A prosperous harbor can slowly become unstable over centuries without people fully realizing disaster is approaching. And perhaps that is why ancient Egypt feels so fragile beneath all its monumental stone. Because despite the appearance of permanence, much of Egyptian civilization depended on delicate environmental balance. The Nile gave life, but it also moved constantly. Sand buried roads and settlements. Climate shifts transformed entire regions. Even thriving cities could become abandoned when trade routes changed or political power shifted elsewhere. One extraordinary example emerged recently near Luxor, where archaeologists uncovered what became known popularly as the Lost Golden City. For centuries, the settlement remained hidden beneath desert sand despite lying near some of Egypt's most famous monuments. When excavation began revealing streets, homes, bakeries, workshops, tools, jewelry, and everyday objects, the site created enormous excitement among historians. What made the discovery so powerful was not only the wealth of artifacts, but the feeling of immediacy. Mud brick walls still stood in places. Storage jars remained where workers once left them. The city did not feel abstract or symbolic. It felt interrupted, as though people had stepped away only yesterday instead of over 3,000 years ago. And discoveries like this raise unsettling questions. How many other Egyptian cities remain buried beneath the desert? Modern archaeology increasingly relies on satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, and remote sensing technology capable of detecting hidden structures invisible from the surface. In some areas, faint outlines of roads, walls, canals, and foundations appear beneath the sand like ghosts of forgotten landscapes. But excavation itself remains slow, expensive, and difficult. Egypt is enormous, Many ancient settlements lie beneath modern towns or farmland. Other regions remain politically sensitive or environmentally difficult to excavate fully. In truth, archaeologists have only explored a fraction of what ancient Egypt may still contain. And some of the most mysterious places are not cities at all, but hidden spaces beneath temples and tomb complexes. Ancient writers occasionally described enormous underground labyrinths connected to Egyptian sacred sites. Greek historian Herodotus claimed to have seen a vast labyrinth near Hawara that he believed surpassed even the pyramids in complexity. Modern archaeology has uncovered remains associated with this structure, though much about it remains uncertain, because large portions were dismantled long ago for building materials. Still, the possibility of enormous lost ceremonial spaces hidden beneath the Egyptian landscape continues to fascinate researchers and explorers alike. And then there are the tombs. The Valley of the Kings alone still produces surprises after generations of excavation. Hidden chambers, sealed corridors, unfinished tombs, and buried caches continue appearing in places already studied for decades. Some archaeologists suspect undiscovered royal burials may still exist nearby, despite the enormous amount of previous exploration. That possibility became especially famous after speculation surrounding hidden chambers near Tutankhamun's tomb. Certain scans appeared to suggest anomalies behind walls inside the burial chamber, raising hopes that additional sealed rooms, perhaps even connected to figures like Nefertiti, might remain hidden nearby. Results from later investigations have been debated and remain inconclusive, but the excitement surrounding the theory revealed something important. People still believe Egypt is hiding something. And perhaps it is. Even Egypt's abandoned temple cities carry an atmosphere difficult to explain fully. Places like Karnak, Luxor, Abydos, and Abu Simbel feel less like ruins and more like fragments of another psychological world. Massive columns rise like forests of stone. Hieroglyphs cover walls from floor to ceiling. Sunlight moves slowly through empty courtyards where priests once carried sacred statues beneath incense smoke and chanting voices. In some temples, ancient pigments still survive faintly in protected areas, hinting at how shockingly colorful these places once were before centuries of erosion stripped away most visible paint. Modern people often imagine the ancient world in pale stone and sand tones. But Egypt was once filled with deep blues, reds, golds, and greens, glowing beneath torchlight. And now, much of that world is gone, or partially gone, or waiting beneath the ground. Perhaps the desert itself is the greatest mystery of all. Sand does not destroy the past the way rainforests or humid climates often do. Instead, it buries, preserves, conceals. Entire structures can disappear beneath dunes for centuries before winds expose them again unexpectedly. In this sense, Egypt behaves almost like an enormous archive humanity has not finished opening, and there may be entire stories still hidden inside it. Lost ports, buried cemeteries, forgotten royal compounds, temples swallowed by shifting sand, villages abandoned after drought, tombs untouched since antiquity, Each discovery changes the map slightly, but never enough to fully complete the picture. Because ancient Egypt is too large, too old, and too layered to reveal itself all at once. At night, wind still moves across empty ruins where crowded streets once echoed with voices now lost to history. Beneath the sand, walls continue standing in darkness, while names carved into buried stone wait silently for someone to uncover them again. Somewhere under the desert, entire rooms may still remain sealed exactly as they were left thousands of years ago. And perhaps that possibility is what keeps drawing people back to Egypt generation after generation. Not only because of what has already been found, but because of everything that may still be hidden below the surface, waiting in silence beneath the sand of a civilization that never fully disappeared. Thousands of years have passed since the last pharaoh ruled beside the Nile, yet ancient Egypt still feels strangely alive. Most civilizations fade into history slowly, becoming distant collections of ruins, names, and broken artifacts studied mainly by specialists. But Egypt never fully settled into the past. Its monuments still dominate horizons. Its symbols still appear in films, museums, books, architecture, jewelry, and imagination itself. Even people who know almost nothing about history recognize pyramids instantly. And that may be the strangest legacy of all, because ancient Egypt did not simply survive history. It survived inside human memory. There is something difficult to explain about the emotional effect Egypt has on people. Standing near the pyramids at Giza, many visitors describe the same feeling. Not excitement exactly, but disorientation. The structures appear almost too large, too old, too permanent for the modern mind to place comfortably within ordinary history. Cars move past them now, cities surround them, airplanes cross overhead. Yet the pyramids remain psychologically detached from the modern world, as though they belong to another version of reality entirely. Perhaps that feeling comes from time itself. Most human creations are built for decades. Ancient Egypt built for eternity. And remarkably, some of it worked. The names of rulers like Ramses, Cleopatra, Tutankhamun, and Hatshepsut still survive thousands of years after their deaths. Temples still stand beneath desert skies despite invasions, earthquakes, floods, looting, and political collapse. Tomb paintings still preserve colors older than entire modern nations. In some places, fingerprints left in clay by workers remain visible exactly where they touched wet surfaces over 3,000 years ago. The civilization feels close enough to touch and impossibly distant at the same time. Part of Egypt's enduring power comes from how much it shaped later civilizations. Greek travelers visited Egyptian temples long before Rome dominated the Mediterranean. Egyptian mathematics, architecture, engineering, medicine, and religious ideas influenced surrounding cultures in ways historians still continue tracing today. Even after Egypt lost political independence, its symbolic authority remained enormous. Roman emperors transported obelisks across the empire to project legitimacy and grandeur connected to ancient Egyptian power. Centuries later, Europe would become obsessed with Egypt all over again. After Napoleon's campaign in Egypt at the end of the 18th century, scholars, artists, and explorers carried descriptions of Egyptian monuments back into Europe, igniting waves of fascination that became known as Egyptomania. Suddenly, sphinxes appeared in gardens. Obelisks decorated cities. Egyptian symbols entered fashion, architecture, literature, and popular imagination. Then came one of the most important discoveries in archaeological history: the Rosetta Stone. Without it, much of ancient Egypt might still remain silent. The stone contained the same text written in multiple scripts, including Greek and Egyptian hieroglyphs. Because scholars could already read Greek, they slowly began decoding hieroglyphic writing through comparison. When Jean-François Champollion finally unlocked major parts of the system in the early 19th century, Egypt transformed overnight from a civilization of mysterious symbols into one whose voices could begin speaking again. That moment changed history. Before the Rosetta Stone, people could see Egypt. Afterward, they could start hearing it. And what emerged from those inscriptions was far more human and complicated than many earlier fantasies imagined. Hieroglyphs revealed tax records, prayers, love poems, political propaganda, complaints, contracts, military reports, hymns, and deeply personal messages preserved across centuries. Ancient Egyptians suddenly became individuals again, rather than silent figures trapped in stone. Yet even as modern scholarship advanced, mystery never disappeared completely. In fact, Egypt's growing accessibility may have increased fascination rather than reducing it. The more researchers uncovered, the more people realized how much remained uncertain. New tombs appeared. Hidden chambers emerged through scanning technology. Ancient DNA revealed unexpected family connections. Climate research reshaped understanding of the Nile and environmental change. Entire buried cities surfaced beneath sand. Egypt kept refusing to become fully understood. And perhaps that resistance explains why modern popular culture continues returning to it endlessly. Movies, novels, documentaries, conspiracy theories, horror stories, treasure hunts, and fantasy worlds all repeatedly draw from Egyptian imagery because the civilization exists at a strange intersection between historical reality and mythic atmosphere. Mummies became horror icons. Pharaohs became symbols of power and curse. Lost tombs became gateways to mystery. Ancient gods returned in stories centuries after their worship ended. Sometimes, these portrayals distort history badly, reducing Egypt into stereotypes of curses and hidden treasure. But even inaccurate depictions reveal something real underneath them. Egypt activates curiosity in ways few civilizations ever have, because it touches fears and desires that remain deeply human. Fear of death, fear of being forgotten, desire for permanence, desire to leave something behind that survives time. Ancient Egypt understood those emotions extraordinarily well. The civilization built entire systems around memory itself. Tombs preserved names, monuments projected continuity, religious rituals promised survival after death. Even architecture communicated permanence psychologically through overwhelming scale and repetition. Egypt was not merely building structures, it was building resistance against oblivion. And ironically, that obsession may be exactly why the civilization remained unforgettable. Modern science has also transformed the study of Egypt in ways earlier generations could never imagine. CT scans now allow researchers to examine mummies without unwrapping them. Satellite imagery reveals hidden structures beneath desert sand. Chemical analysis traces ancient perfumes, pigments, and embalming materials. DNA studies investigate family relationships and disease. Ground-penetrating radar searches for buried chambers invisible from the surface. Yet technology often deepens mystery rather than eliminating it. Scans reveal unexplained voids inside pyramids. Ancient remains raise new questions about royal bloodlines and illness. Climate studies suggest environmental shifts may have influenced political collapse more dramatically than once believed. The farther researchers push into Egypt's past, the more complex the civilization becomes. And still, some mysteries may never fully resolve. How many tombs remain undiscovered? How much early history vanished beneath the Nile Delta? How many texts were destroyed over centuries of war, looting, and decay? Did ordinary Egyptians privately doubt aspects of religion the same way people do today? Or were spiritual beliefs experienced differently in the ancient world? History leaves fragments, not complete stories. And perhaps Egypt's greatest legacy is teaching humanity how fragile civilization truly is. Because despite all its power, wealth, engineering brilliance, and monumental ambition, Egypt eventually changed, fragmented, and lost political control like every empire before and after it. Sand buried cities, temples crumbled, trade routes shifted, religions transformed, languages disappeared. Time continued moving forward. Yet something survived anyway. Not the empire itself, but the feeling of it. At night, moonlight still touches the edges of temples, where priests once carried sacred statues through incense smoke. Wind moves across abandoned courtyards, where thousands of voices once echoed beneath painted columns, now fading beneath centuries of erosion. Deep underground, sealed tombs may still remain untouched, while names carved into stone continue waiting in darkness. And somewhere between archaeology and memory, ancient Egypt still exists. Not exactly as it truly was, because no civilization can survive unchanged for thousands of years inside human imagination. Myths distort reality. Modern people project fantasies onto the past. Entire industries now surround Egypt's mysteries. But beneath all of that, something authentic still remains visible through the dust and legend. A civilization trying to outlast death. A civilization trying to preserve itself against time. And perhaps that is why ancient Egypt continues pulling people toward it, generation after generation. Because in the end, the pyramids, temples, tombs, and forgotten cities are not only reminders of the ancient world, they are reminders of what every civilization secretly hopes for: to leave behind something that will still be remembered long after the people themselves are gone. Thank you for spending this time with me tonight. If you enjoyed this journey through ancient Egypt, don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment below telling me what mystery or ancient civilization you'd like me to explore next. Wishing you a peaceful night, good luck, and sweet dreams tonight.